Welcome to today's Attaining the Worlds review. We are reviewing chapter, and it's a wonderful chapter, very challenging from my perspective. Cognition of the spiritual world. We have been having some discussion about it prior to starting the review. For me personally, I felt this chapter provoked an inner challenge. I want to perceive something beyond what I can recognize right now. I began to ask myself, I've never asked myself before, how do I see people? How do I hear people? How do I feel people? How do I know you are called Elisa, you're called Francis? But this chapter was very thought provocative for me. And it's left me thinking we are so much into all sort of business we don't even understand ourselves, not to mention understand what lies beyond ourselves. And I felt I certainly want to go through this again, review it personally, observe how I'm thinking and how I am perceiving the world that am in, because this chapter really is about cognition of the spiritual world. But one thing it started off with is that there's been a lot of philosophical studies around the subject, which are wasted materials, because in the end, they start off with certain preposition that is difficult to perceive the creator, but then the other literature say, well, hang on, you can't even make a statement like that without first knowing who the creator is. So therefore, for one to actually say you can't perceive something, you must know that thing. So how do you know a thing? You know the thing when you have the same quality of that thing, because you only perceive what you are able to align yourself with qualitatively. So right from the start, of the onset, we know that we perceive our world through our five senses, which is sight, smell, taste, hearing, and all the rest of it. And it talks about it, goes into detail of how that happens, but then quickly navigates back to the fact that we need spiritual senses. But we know in previous chapters we've already talked about spirituality is all about alignment to the qualities of the creator. So that then means that because for us to really sense the creator using what he referred to as prophetic vision and prophetic hearing, you have to really be in the state of giving. You have to be in the state quality of love. Otherwise, there's no way you could possibly even hear a thing or even sense anything, because all your senses is about receiving, which then means you are permanently stuck in this world. So for me, this was where I got a bit challenged the most, because I felt, well, I want to take the next few weeks, observe myself, observe when I'm in the state of love, what am I really experiencing at that state? Because I've never consciously asked myself or even examined myself, and this chapter provoked me to do so. Francis, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. But also, just to add to or build on what Sheila is saying, it also shows that our sensory organs is simply inadequate to perceive the Creator. In other words, if we're talking about cognition of the spiritual or the Creator, he makes a very strong point that our sensory organs, the five organs that we have, is purely and clearly inadequate. I will read a paragraph here. Kabbalists who have attained the prophetic understanding, this is on page 342. Kabbalists who have attained the prophetic understanding of the Creator, first perceiving through their spiritual counterparts of sight or hearing. Later, they interpret what they perceived. Notably, comprehending visible phenomena gives them complete cognition, whereas it is impossible to comprehend the nature of a purely auditory phenomenon. But just as in our world, even simple hearing is sufficient to grasp qualities of an object studied. Even a person blind from birth senses many qualities of those nearby. So spiritual cognition, derived through hearing, is also sufficient. This is due to the fact that with spiritual hearing, the information that reaches one contains with it all the other concealed qualities. Yeah, so just to dwell on this, I feel like I am not there. I haven't reached that point where spiritually I can hear the Creator. Simply because, as you mentioned earlier, I am still grappling, with my ego. My own self prevents me. So much noise prevents me from really hearing or tuning in to hear the Creator or having that experience of hearing the Creator. And as we go forward, he mentions about a light that emanates from the Creator. If we're going to hear him, if we're going to feel him, if we're going to perceive him, it is through the light that emanates, from him. And a person needs a certain vessel, a different vessel from the physical five sensory organs that we have to be able to perceive the spiritual light that emanates from the Creator. So?
Thanks, Francis. Yes. So this chapter of cognition, like recognition of the Creator, how do we actually perceive him? As we learn about him, his other names being called Matil, from which also forms the world of Atzilut. So simply Matil, it means shadows, because he conceals himself, because we do not yet have the sensory organs to perceive him. Our five senses are not able to perceive him as yet. It's like as uh, Sheila has said, how do we actually know a person? We know a person based on the person's qualities. The person is loving or always sad or this or that. So for us to be able to know the Creator, the spiritual world, we must begin to build the sensory organs relevant to him. And before we can do that, we need to understand that even when you hear sound, it's not like the vocal cords of the person speaking is connected to the eardrum of the listener, but only through the medium in between are we able to perceive what the giver or someone speaking is saying. So just as we cannot see electricity with our eyes, but we see only the effects of electricity, you turn on the light and at the switch and the light comes on. So just like that, we perceive the Creator through different worlds that he has built for us. And the more when we begin to study in a group, we begin to perceive this through the light that Francis was talking about, which is actually the Creator himself presented in that light, since we cannot see him directly. So he creates this world for us that we learned about in the previous chapter, and we'll learn about in the upcoming chapters. But in a nutshell, for us to be able to recognize or have the cognition of the spiritual world, we need that equivalence of form, meaning acquire new qualities, qualities of love, of bestowal, of selflessness that we keep on speaking about. Delis?
I'm stuck in this chapter. All that seems to stay with me is one or two lines where the paragraph starts off by saying, all we perceive is ourselves as being real, this body. This is the truth. This is what I perceive. This is all that exists as I perceive it. And everything outside of me is perhaps not real. And this is absolutely not the truth. In the truth being that what's outside of me is actually the reality that I need to somehow perceive. I need to step outside of myself. I think somehow something about that statement links us into this cognition of the creator. And I think it touches on what we've all said about cultivating this new vessel, this new desire, this new sensation um, of trying to step out of the ego, trying to step out of the self love. But in order to do that, I guess you first have to perceive the self love, this buffer, this boundary. Actually, interesting, this boundary that prevents you from experiencing the creator. But in this buffer, as you slowly sense it and look at it from a spiritual perspective, that you want to step over it, you want to actually desire and pray for help and assistance to get to this new state, perhaps then some of this cognition of the creator comes through gradually. Back to you, Sheila.
Yes, and that's the essence, because we have covered almost 75% of this book, and we've covered quite a lot of topics which are all telling us about the importance of being outside ourselves, because each of these actions, if you look at them closely, they're actions outside oneself. And this chapter actually talks about the cognition, being how do you recognize the creator? Well, you have to be outside yourself. How do we be outside ourselves? We always have to be in faith above reason, because we've covered faith considerably, and we always have to be, as soon as you build this masa, which we talked about in other chapters, and restrict our egos and want to do good to another, you're already outside yourself. And this is how you build this cognition to sense the creator. Because for me, I have experienced quite a lot of phenomenon that sometimes I say to myself, how did that happen? Then about my five senses, I can never explain how any of these things happen. But then you then suddenly begin to make sense of this chapter, that's actually when we are outside ourselves, we are building another sensory vessel, which perhaps unconsciously we have not paid attention to. And that for me was the provocation of this chapter, because I personally have not consciously tried to study what is this phenomenon that I've just experienced. And I'll give you one example. Many, many times this has happened to me, that you just say, something happened, and you have this resistance, or you want to fight back. And then you put this restriction on you, and you decide not to fight back, and rather to pray about the situation. And I will tell you once, and this, which was so, it was almost to me like a miracle, and I never recognized how this miracle happened. And I remember I was living in this hotel, and I'd been made homeless, and now I was like sitting there. I really want, if I have on my way, I will beat everybody up, kill everyone that day when this happened to me. But then I decided, no, you're not going to do that, Sheila. You're going to put into practice what you have been told to do. And this was the painful thing. And I decided, okay, fine, you're going to pray, you're going to read Psalms, you're going to do any of these things. And I remembered how I just kind of got this drive to come to a particular location. Don't even know how I got to this location. And how I got here, I don't even know why I choose this location, but I choose the location anyway. Then a few days later, I was given this opportunity to go and view this particular property. I don't even have the qualification. Well, it's a very nice place. In fact, I subsequently realized that it's a place where wealthy people, I didn't even know the people there. It's a wealthy area. I don't even know anything. And I showed someone the paper, and they saw the building. They said, oh, this is plush. Do you realize the type of people who live in this area? This is a very nice place. And you must have a lot of money, the person said to me. And I don't have a lot of money, so I don't even know what the heck is this person talking about. And then eventually they called me, they said, fine, we're giving you the place. Well, I came into this place, everything that I needed, washing machine, dishwasher, everything was provided for me. Bed, everything. And I showed people, they said, what? How did you get this place? I have never been able to answer how any of this happened to me. So in the end, you begin to wonder now that when you are in this state of I think something is happening that we don't even consciously understand. What is it that is happening? And that is why I said this chapter for me was a very interesting chapter, because it made me realize there have been so many things that happened to me that I could never explain, but it was just the act of restricting myself and just focusing on something else that I know got me out of the situation. I know, Dilys, you want to say something? Okay. So yes, so in the end, I think for me, this chapter was really when we do what the Kabbalists say we should do, we are developing the same quality as the Creator. It's almost like you don't know what's going to happen, but you leave everything in the hands of the Creator, and the Creator arrange things. And there's a bit of the chapter where it says that the Creator is omnipotent. And I remember going back and look at this and put omnipotence mean all powerful. And we need to get to this point where we trust the power, not because of ourselves, but, and this is the thing, don't do it because of yourself, because as soon as you do it because of yourself, you're already in the ego again. You do it because you know the Creator is using you to correct something else in the system, but not because you want to gain from it. So if you listen to this, please do not think that at the time I operated in any of this, I was even thinking about this property in this particular location. I wasn't even thinking. I was just going with whatever it is the wind throw at me. So at the end, I think the Creator takes care of creation, corrects creation through us, through all of our events. All we have to do is to silence our ego and recognize that it's all going to be for the good of everybody at the end. I guess that's cognition for today. Any other comment before we close?
I think we all agree.
Okay. So until next week, thank you all for watching, and we shall see you next week. Thank
you. Right. Bye-bye.